All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us with Aaron from Redmond's Minerals. He's going to present a talk and then give us a lot of time to ask our questions. If you would prefer not to unmute to ask your question, feel free to drop that in the chat and it will get asked for you. Otherwise, we ask that you do keep it on mute so that Aaron's not interrupted during his presentation. Thank you. Take it away, Aaron. Thanks.
And I'm not that formal, so if something happens, don't worry about it. All right. Just gonna go ahead and try to share this. Let's see, make sure I have up what I want. Let's see, content only. Okay. Are you guys seeing seeing my screen?
Yes. We're
Okay.
seeing your whole screen with the address bar and everything.
Address bar, everything at the top. Okay, let me go to this. That probably is a little better.
There you go. Looks great.
Okay. Well, good. I have a few questions that Hannah prepped me with too. Um, and so we'll just kind of jump in and kind of tell you more about, I guess you guys might know, I know everybody's muted, but is there quite a bit, everybody familiar with Redmond in this group? Or a lot of people anyway? What do you
Yes.
mean? Okay, very good. Probably quite a few users then on the farm and on the table.
Yes.
Real salt and
Absolutely.
stuff, relight, all of it. Yeah, okay, good. Good.
My toothpaste.
And the toothpaste even. Yeah, they just made some new stuff with some hydroxyapatite in it. But anyway, well, what we'll cover tonight, I guess, first of all, by way of introduction, you can see my name on the screen, Aaron Elison. I have been actually employed by Redmond for 20 years now. This is my 20th year. I got my introduction actually for the through the quality salt that we have, but also we have some industrial stuff. When I was in Colorado, that's how I get introduced to them. But I had been previous to that. Well, what took me to Colorado was I went to school at Utah State University. I was in animal science. That's where I got my graduate degree, and then spent some time with a company that had some ranches and farms and dairies and stuff like that. That's what I did before I came to Redmond. So that's what I do or did, and that's what I've been doing. So as far as Redmond goes, and some of this might be, um, you know, redundant for some of you, depending, but we'll just cover it anyway because it is a little bit different. So the way I'm gonna jump down a couple here, I guess just for kicks. We're involved in a lot of things. I won't take any time on this tonight, but agriculture is just a piece of it here at the very bottom. The living stuff, the Redmond Life stuff, the real salt, the relight, earth paste, all that stuff, that's up here. But we have a lot of other things we delve into, and some of you probably have seen the Trophy Rock branded or maybe the Equine Products branded. We've got a little farm here where we have some, not miniatures, but we have some milking jerseys, and we sell raw milk here in Utah at our little outlets and little stores we have. And then we have industrial stuff. And anyway, there's a lot of stuff. I won't bore you with that. If you want to come back to it later, we sure can. But I want to show you something here just to kick it off. Um, when it comes to minerals, because that's what we are on the farm, when you have, and I'm going to assume most of you are probably grazing, you probably feed a little bit of other stuff too. You probably have some grain things, whatever, energy, all that kind of stuff. But commonly forage diets are pretty good with mineral content. And I have analyzed forages all these years over all of the country. And what the number one thing, probably 95% of the time or more, that is short in a forage diet is actually salt. The industry, the way the industry works, is they will take 100% of the daily requirement, and they'll formulate minerals to meet that 100%. But the thing is, we're already up to here with minerals that we need. Most of this requirement here is salt, and so all of this up here is excess, and it's wasted, and it's passed through the animals and stuff like that. To illustrate my point today, in fact, maybe I'll give you this slide right here. So this same little bar, here's where your feed is as far as minerals are concerned. Most of that is a salt requirement. Here's all the other stuff. I talked to a guy today in Montana. He's a rancher that's trying to go organic because they're selling off farm, their meat, that whole thing, the high quality, and it's like, good deal. I'm grateful for that. I'm glad to see these little farms being able to make money like that and do things that are, different topic. But he shared with me the mineral that he was using or has been using all this time previous. This part about when they balance, when the industry tends to balance for 100% of the need right down here, and it's all excess. The mineral he was using was actually flip-flop of this red space and this orange space. The first ingredient on his mineral was filler. Basically, your mineral tags will say it's plant protein products or, something to that nature. Sometimes they'll even have molasses in. And so not only is he spending, ghastly amounts of money for his mineral, most of this macro mineral, guess what it is? Limestone. So it's not very available anyway. And so, and I hate to be too cynical, but I've been doing this too long. There are a couple of reasons that they give you this. Some guys say, well, it's insurance, so we're going to just really throw the mineral at you so you're covered. But the thing is, when it comes to salt, this is what the gap is. We call the gap. There's no money in that because there are a lot of salt sources, And so the money is made in the nutrition world by selling this stuff up here. But in this guy's case, and when you have a mineral that's like 12% calcium, every ton of that mineral that's made has about 500 or 600 pounds of limestone in it, a full quarter of it. And then it'll have some dicalcium phosphate for the phosphorus. Then it'll have these fillers. Anyway, that we're not going to go deep into any of that this time, but the point of this is what the typical industry does. So it's very typical to get a pretty expensive mineral. The salt content in that mineral is low. And what I'm saying is, in the experience that we've been doing, the forage content, you just don't have that much requirement. And if ever you want to send me forage samples, I can show you. We're not going to go through it in this meeting unless you want to, but we can look at that. I can tell you what these cows need. We can look at what you have. And what you'll find is this gap isn't very big, especially on forage diets, especially for calcium. And we can take care of that pretty easy. So that's one big thing that I wanted to show you. And if you have any questions about that, go ahead and pipe up. Don't offend me to just unmute and speak up. I'm okay with that. The more informal, the better. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So we take this approach. Let's only have you spend money on what you need and not worry about all this. And the reason we do that, there are a couple of things here. I'm going to jump back. Sorry for jumping around a little bit. But there is no question the biology in these animals or in our own systems or in the soil, whatever, they are highly complex. There's no question. But what's cool about nature is nature has a way, all of these minerals in this circle, they obviously they interact with each other, but minerals, that's not the only thing. You got to talk about the endocrine system, the hormones. You got to talk about the bacteria and the protozoa and everything else that's going on inside of that critter or in us. It is very, very difficult. And then the forms of these minerals. Did it come from hay? Did it come from grass? Did it come from grain in our own rations or in our own diets? Did it come from garden vegetables? Did it come from red meat? Did it, and so no one really has this figured out. And any university guy, I really respect the ones that are willing to admit that. This is very much an art still. We know a few things about a few minerals, but nutrition is still a lot of art, especially when it comes to minerals. So it's highly complex. But the beautiful thing now, Redmond fills in the gap that I showed you. But the other beautiful thing about these products that I want to drill home, and the reason I'm spending time on this is the number one thing that we have to understand to make it make sense. This will be the easier one to introduce that topic with. We all know that the calf on the cow is way better than powder. And most of you, I'll bet, have a story to tell, whether it's your kids or your grandkids or whatever, that somebody along the way had problem with baby formula, different than milk. That's why you guys all have cows. You know, Same thing here. Our approach, these, first of all, these kind of products, this pile down here and this calf on its mama, these are nature's way. This is what nature understands. I'm borrowing the term from a professor. He calls it nature's intelligence. He says when you take that web right there and we just kind of throw the right things at nature, and nature has a way of figuring that out. Well, this is what we're talking about. So we want to take the first approach on any operation, doesn't matter what it is to go at it as much, and even our own diets, go at it as much as we can with whole food type products. So in our diet, we all know that. And so it's better to sit down to a meal that is all whole foods. You supplement as needed, not the other way around. We just don't eat a few of whatever and supplement like crazy, because now you're not in nature's balance. I mean, when you throw in a ton of mineral, for example, that I just talked about, if you throw a big dose of that limestone at that rumen in those cows, the system is shot. It's like, what do I do with all this stuff? It's kind of like when you throw several hundred pounds of urea in the soil. The microbes in the soil are going, what do I do with this stuff? The ones that are still alive to survive it, you know? So nature's intelligence. So the reason I talk about whole food type things is just like in this example here, the pelleted fertilizer, the NPK versus this compost pile. Our approach is, and it's easier to talk about it on the soil. Our approach is that we are going after building soil more than we are fertilizing plants. We're going after building health in our bodies, in our animals, than drugs and band-aids. And an example I came up with just the other day when I was talking to somebody, it's like, speaking of the soil again, using NP and K is kind of like giving your headache Tylenol. It takes care of an acute need right now. It helps you get over a situation, but Tylenol does nothing to build health. It does nothing to keep you from getting a headache again sometime. It does nothing to build your immune system. It doesn't do any of that. So NP and K to the soil is kind of like Tylenol. So our approach is let's use wholesome, whole, natural products that nature knows what to do with, and let's actually build health so that nature can take care of itself the way it's supposed to. I know this is not a new concept for all of you, but the reason I point that out is because when you take a look at Redmond products, this is exactly what we're talking about. So not only do we address the gap that your feeds don't have, these are whole food type products. And what I mean by that is most people obviously are familiar with our salt. The left picture is a picture of one of the veins in the mine. Um, that was deposited by the ancient sea. It is not refined sodium chloride. And as you all know, there's color in it. That just means there's a lot of mineral in it. And even though there's only 5 or 6 or 8% trace minerals to go along with the salt, they're complex minerals. They're complex chlorides. You have the calcium and the magnesium and the potassium, not just the sodium. And that reacts completely different in biology than a refined salt does. And all these things I'm telling you, by the way, we have done our own testing. We can back up what we're saying. And if you want, I can even show you some of that. The Redmond conditioner, which is also Redmond clay that you talked about in the toothpaste, that's volcanic mineral. So that's part of the overburden of this mine out here. It's on top. We still excavate from above with that. But what that is, the reason it's a whole food type of a mineral supplement is that the geologists tell us fell into this seawater. It took on the properties of sea minerals. And so you've got a highly, highly mineralized volcanic mineral. And I think most of you've probably heard, you go back in history, like when Mount St. Helens erupted or whatever, years later, that clay, that ash layer, what it did for the soil and the biology, and even in the lakes, stuff like that. I listened to a documentary one time about that, how the color, the size, the vibrancy of some of the aquatic life in one of those lakes up there, 20 years later, just phenomenal. It was never like that before. So these are two separate and distinct products. These are the natural resources that we have here, the ones that God made that we can put into these living systems, but distinctly different. For those, if you don't know, the salt's pretty easy to explain. Mineralized sea salt. This, we call it Redmond conditioner on the ag side. We call it Redmond clay on the human side. That does not have salt in it. So you can't just interchange these because Redmond conditioner alone will not give your animals not even close to enough salt. But what it does have is a lot more of every other mineral. So that's Redmond conditioner. But the other cool thing is it comes with a lot of really, like, it binds toxins really well. You've probably heard of some of that if you've used Redmond clay on injuries. It will suck infection right out of a wound if you apply it topically. I even put it in my shakes a couple times a week. I shouldn't tell you that. I'll deny it if the FDA asks you, but it just does cool things like that. And so it helps to digest the feed better. So we always, 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 and I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, but we always suggest to do that. One of the questions that you guys said you'd like to get to, and we will, is how to feed it, when to top dress, things like that. But I wanted to just lay this foundation just because that's where we're different. That's where it's critical. We are working with nature. We're working with things. And when you use products like this, you can't screw it up. Even for people that put it on the fields. And yes, we put both of these products on soil. You can't, unless you like do way, way too much, you just can't mess it up because biology knows what to do with stuff like this. You can't say that with a lot of other things. If you overdo it, you run into trouble. So I do want to give you a a couple of things, and this is since you all have these Jersey cattle, um, here are the principles. After what we've talked about, your feed, don't underestimate your feed. The rest of the industry just thinks, they just assume we're just going to give you everything. We don't care what's in the feed. And that's the way they make their money. But the higher quality the feed, the less mineral that you need. Um, and we have guys that have been doing this long enough, both in the animals and on their farm, on their fields. I have one guy that's got about 40 beef cows out in southern Indiana. I was just talking to him the other day. In fact, he's a very good dealer. He said, on this herd, I've had it since my dad had this farm. I used to spend about $1,500 a year on mineral for these animals. Since I've started taking care of my land and my crops, I can't get them to eat any more than about $500 worth in a year, which is totally the way we want to go. So he is growing phenomenal feed for his family and for his animals right there on the property because he's building nature. He's working with nature. He's not just using NP and K and not using, all that other funky stuff on the cattle. So number one, your feed quality. A couple things that the animals recognize this too. If you were to strip everything away and let these animals get purged, and you introduce 2 or 3 products, Redmond being one of them, they will choose Redmond. They just do. Here's an example of that. This is a Redmond salt block, the one that the heart is around, and on the, I guess you can probably see my mouse, that's this block here. This trace mineral block right here is actually a Redmond block too, with added trace minerals. And then you've got just the standard trace mineral block that you can buy at Feed Store USA, a white salt block, an iodized block from, the feed store. 3 weeks later, you can't see those dates, but 3 weeks later, these nubbins are all that's left of the straight, just salt. You can see they've hit some of this other, but they preferred it over the white salt. They preferred over the trace mineral loaded stuff. And that happens 95% of the time. So that's one of those things. The animals, they prefer it. We talked about the heavy commercial mixes already, that middle point. I guarantee you look at any of those when I say heavy mix, I'm talking about those that have like 8 or 10 or 12% calcium and high percents of phosphorus. And you just look at the labels on there, and plant products will be in the top 3 products. You don't need to buy that kind of stuff. You don't need that. There's a cheaper way to give your animals energy if you want that. But they put it in because I guarantee you can take this to the bank. If they did not put that in there, your cows would not touch it. That's why they do it. Because the cattle are smart enough to recognize that's not nature's intelligence to throw that much of something at them. So Redmond's products are different because they're whole food, they're balanced, they're nature's proportion, and Redmond conditioner enhances results that I'll show you in a minute. I just wanted to show you a little bit, another slide to substantiate what I'm talking about. I'll introduce it before I get there. But this one happened, we've done several dairy studies. This particular one I'm going to share with you was done with beef cattle in Montana because we got Montana State to do it for us. But you have a pasture here with cows and calves in it, and they're grazing summertime. And they use the EID system. So basically, the identification they put on the animals dictates which bins, when they walk into them, will allow the salt mineral to come down and feed them. So half of the herd gets Redmond salt with the trace mineral pack. The other half of the herd gets refined white salt with the exact same trace mineral pack, and all that's blended together. Okay, that's the setup for these results. In just 3 months, and then after, this is Montana State again, when they collected the data, you're talking about the cows and calves both gaining quite a bit more weight just in 3 months. That this equates on those calves, it equated to about 23 pounds, if I remember right, 24. Over 3 months, the only difference was Redmond salt versus the refined white salt. And same with the cows. So it's just like, there's just something about it. We can't explain all the physiology. We can't explain all the reasons. Everybody wants us to research it. And I'm like, well, we could. Every university, and we've done a lot of studies. I've used West Virginia. I've used UC Davis in California. I've used Montana State University. And we've done our share. So I'm not just making this stuff up. And I won't bore you with all that. But this stuff works. We can substantiate what we're talking about. But the telltale is, and if any of you have used it a long time, hopefully you have an experience that says the same thing. But that's really what goes on here. So it is different. If I could do it all over again, in fact, I had one guy, because he's a dealer right near where I ranched. I used to buy a bunch of stuff from him when I was in Montana. He's like, okay, now you're working for the company. You're just selling me that, right? I said, I will tell you, John, I said, if I knew then what I know now, this is exactly what I would do. It just flat works. I guess that's why I stay here for 20 years. Let me get into, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of stuff, but let me get into how we feed this stuff now. Probably the easiest rule of thumb, the straight Redmond salt is the green bags on the left, 10 fine and 10 fine with garlic. You throw garlic in if you want some fly control, lice control, anything that bites, parasitic type stuff. If the forage is high quality, you can use that. If it's medium quality, you can choose selenium 90. If it's low quality, you can use the beef mineral, and that works on your dairy cows too. They're no different just because they're dairy and beef. The mineral requirements, I've done a lot of studying with all that too. So nothing is quite as different as people want to make it, because the difference and the fear is where the money is, you know. So that's really how you choose which one to use. And what these are, selenium 90 is straight Redmond salt in the green bag, but it has 6 of the common traces added to it that a lot of operations find useful, like copper, manganese, zinc, cobalt, iodine, and selenium. Beef mineral takes selenium 90 and just adds a little bit of calcium, not very much, a little bit of phosphorus, and some vitamins. So it's just kind of it's staged up that way. And that's why you choose which one according to your feed quality. I will say that any one of these 3 you can use all year round. There's not enough of anything in beef mineral that would inhibit you from just using that one if you chose to. I'm not the guy that will put a salt mix together like the one I talked to today that I talked about earlier. That salt content in that mineral is about 3%. He had to feed, here's the funny part. He said, yeah, they even recommend feeding salt on the side. I said, how much salt did they eat compared to that? He said, about 3 to 1. I'm like, okay, that tells you a lot of what I just said. So we still keep this about 80% Redmond salt, even on the beef mineral. So you can choose whichever, or you can just, if you like the insurance, you can use the beef mineral, but you don't have to. And again, if you ever want to send me a feed sample that you have, I'll be happy to walk you through it so that you understand it. My goal is to help you all make these decisions without having to consult some kind of a PhD or whatever, because it's just not that difficult. Nature, it is complex, but nature made it easy by giving us whole products like this. The only other thing we do after that is we pair it with Redmond conditioner. So, and you can play with that conditioner. Some animals want a lot of it, some don't want very much of it, and that's okay. The more stress the animals are under, the more they want Redmond conditioner. So, for example, if you are feeding fair amounts of grain, let's say, to one of your cows when she's milking, the more grain you put in her, the more acidic her stomach is, the more conditioner she'll want, because it buffers that down. It buffers the acid in their guts. So that's one of the things it does. It's binding the toxins out of the feed you have. If there's any mold or anything like that, conditioner will take care of that. Conditioner takes, I don't know if any of you have heard Steve Campbell's name ever in meetings, but he runs around and says, if you get any chemical spray from your neighbor coming across the fence, this will even take care of that kind of stuff, or, you know, the GMO stuff or whatever. That's why we put conditioner in it. The more stress they're under, the more they want to eat it. So we just say, take 1 part of conditioner and throw that into 2 or 3 or 4 parts of whichever one of those salts in the last slide you choose. That's the mineral program. It's that easy. Nature takes care of it. It doesn't have to be complicated. And unless you have something on your farm that's just really, really messed up and really out of whack, which we're happy to look at and try to help you through it. But otherwise, that is the program. You don't have to overthink it. Your animals will do really well. We have fed enough thousands and thousands of milk cows now for all these years that we can say what I'm saying with full confidence. So that's the feeding program. It's that easy. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute since I can't see all of you, and just speak up. Does
I would
that,
love to ask a question.
you bet.
So would you be able to go back to the slide that showed the 3 primary salts?
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have purchased both the 10 fine, actually, and with and without garlic. And then
Okay.
we tried the selenium 90 one time
Okay.
because we're in an area where our soil is deficient. And our cows really did not want to eat the selenium 90. But if I give them separately just pure selenium, they will eat that. And at least, and some more than others. Like there's one who like could never get enough of it, it seems like. Just curious if you have any ideas on what might be going
Really
on.
interesting. What kind of selenium did you offer out there? Do you
We got
remember?
it from Advanced Biological Concepts. I believe it's just like it's a powder. It's just I don't recall the ingredients offhand, but it was very they're basically just individual minerals.
And I know ABC. In fact, the salt they choose to use is actually Redmond, or at least for years and years and years it has been. I don't know if it's changed lately, but yeah, so I don't know which selenium. I'd have to look up and see what they're using. That could have a factor, but I don't know that I have an answer for you.
Okay.
Um, that is interesting. And maybe it's the other minerals that are in selenium 90, you know. But the fact that yours don't want to eat a whole lot of other stuff is actually a really good sign. That means the balance is pretty good, you know, the proportion's pretty good. Your feed is probably pretty good, you know, coming off your soil and stuff. But yeah, I don't know why they would do that. I don't know why they would eat straight selenium and not, and that one you got to be careful with because selenium is just about as deadly as arsenic. And so that the animal requirements are tiny, tiny, tiny. So free choicing that, you want to be really careful.
Okay. Thank you.
For example, you know, cows might need, well, you're only supposed to get 3 milligrams a day, period, of selenium. And when they eat calcium or some of those are in the thousands, 45,000 milligrams of calcium. Of course, it's a macro mineral, but um, anyway, good question. What other questions?
I have one if nobody's going to go next. I don't know if y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So in our world, I'm primarily from the beef cattle world, and I'm making my way over into the dairy world. Lorinda has been amazing to me. She's precious. So I'm still learning. I'm trying to soak up everything I can. But we hear a lot, especially in the springtime and the summertime. Down here in South Carolina, especially our fields, we're primarily fescue. I'm hoping that we can change that over the years, try to beat out some of that fescue, but that's what we got right now. So that's what we're working with. But high mag, you hear, we feed high mag minerals just for the magnesium in the springtime when everything's lush. So with your 10 fine, is that naturally higher in magnesium to match that? Why do people automatically go for high mag? Can you explain that?
What a great question. So I'm going to back up to the preamble that I gave up to building up to this. That's the thinking that the world has developed. Um, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Swarzak. Have you heard his name before? He
No, sir, I haven't.
he passed away a few years ago, but he was a toxicologist at the University of Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
He became a huge Redmond fan. He was on the team actually that did the autopsy on this racehorse Secretariat. So this
Oh,
guy, yeah, before he started liking Redmond products and seeing what they do, he rescued tons of horses and cattle. And when they started figuring out that he was talking about Redmond stuff, they kind of put him in a box and because
yeah, that's how it goes.
when you're working for the university, they love university guys that after they retire, then they can talk about whatever they want to talk about, what they know. But anyway, the reason I ask about that, if you look up Beef Magazine in 2003, I forget which month, even clear back then, he wrote an article for that very question about magnesium minerals. Here's what he says, and here's what we've also found, because the same question comes at us from Nebraska. I was at a producer meeting there, a whole room full of them, and they asked the exact same question. You know, the spring and the lush and all that, the high mag. Um, Here's the deal. That same mineral that I talked to you about, a lot of people, and you can tell me if this is the case down in your country there, a lot of those minerals are using are low in salt. When they're low in salt, if they hit it hard, it's because they're either going after the grain or the flavor, or they're trying to get more salt and then they're overdosing on the minerals. So those heavy mixes, in those cases, if you don't put mag in, you will get tetany or toxic fescue toxicity. What Dr. Swarzak said and what we've seen is that if you have the proper proportion and balance of the minerals, so even if you take Redmond salt and you put it out with that mineral beside it, I mean, don't mix it, just put it beside it.
Yes, sir.
What he says is when they're getting enough sodium, the sodium actually activates first and easiest and it will take care of the nitrates and it'll take care of everything else that's causing the toxicity, the tetany, and leave the calcium and magnesium alone to do what they're supposed to do. In Nebraska, when they shared this same story, then after I talked about that, then I had a couple producers that had used Redmond and they said, you know what? Now that you say that, we used to do high mag mineral. And when we started doing this, after a couple or 3 years, they just kind of quit eating the high mag mineral and we just quit putting it out. And now that you say that, we have not had tetany. We haven't had any of these issues since then. So
Okay.
will I guarantee that? No, I can't, because I don't know, there are so many variables. But if I were you and I had safety in a high mag mineral, I'm conservative. So what I would do, I would say, okay, I'm going to throw my Redmond out beside it. And if they need more salt, let them have it. And what you'll usually find is they'll pound the heck out of the Redmond salt and eat only a little bit of your other, and that's okay. That's what my cows always did, and ease into it that way. And if you see the good results, then, if you ever want to or you need to, you can phase it out. I I will throw this in. I'm not saying to not feed anything else. And if you have issues in any parts of your country where you're, whatever, your soil, your fields, if you got to have more stuff, by all means, put it in. I mean, we're not saying not to do that. Because some places we've learned, like we had a situation in Iowa with some pigs that they needed just a little more selenium, or a little more selenium, and he gave it to them, and bam, it was perfect. I've seen the same thing with copper. But we just throw at them what they need. Again, fill the gap. Don't go throwing a $50 bag of something at them, because you don't need that. That's doing more harm than good. So
Well, that
anyway,
makes sense.
yeah. So the way this stuff works in biology, and again, this is one of those things we can't explain. The way these minerals work, because of their nature, because of how many minerals there are, they're not just, they're not in the form of them. It's not like sodium selenite, and it's not just zinc oxide and all these things that we try to put together, just like the milk, the formula we talked about. We try to recreate the natural state, but those aren't in a natural state with all of the other minerals we're putting in. And so these react differently in digestion and in the animals, as is evidenced by that Montana study I showed you. So that's the angle we've learned and that we take. But like I say, ease into it, so you don't want to have any wrecks or anything. But we think that that's how it should work out for you ultimately, just because these function so differently.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, especially you can relate it to the standard American diet. I mean, you've got all of the fake stuff and then you throw in the real stuff and it's much more bioavailable. The body utilizes it differently. I mean, table salt versus sea salt. So that kind of made those connections there for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet. And speaking of fescue toxicity, that
Hmm.
brain stuff that goes on when cattle get that,
Yes, sir.
we haven't tested this, but we've had a lot of customers tell us about it, especially when they have conditioner in it, that somehow they just don't get those symptoms so much. So that's kind of a cool thing too. And
Well,
so if you
conditioner is
find,
definitely something we're going to add in because after hearing all that you've said is, especially with the fescue, I feel like that would be something that'd be great for our program because we do have a ton of fescue and it does come with its issues.
and by all means, all of you, don't hesitate to test. I mean, every good operator, even what I'm telling you, sometimes you just got to keep doing trials on your farm. You got to try stuff. You got to make sure, but feel free, especially with that conditioner, play with it. And if your animals keep eating the Redmond salt, whichever of these you choose, if they keep eating it really well, if you want to add a little more conditioner, do it. Observe what's going on. Don't forget to just watch. And if you get up to where it's 50-50, that's fine. We're feeding dairy cows 2/3 Redmond conditioner to 1/3 of any of these salt products. That's how, but they're on heavy starch diets. They're
Yeah.
acidic by nature because of all that grain they're getting. And in fact, you put conditioner out to those cows, they'll just free choice it. They'll just vacuum it up. Those
And
are
it
the
is
cows.
safe to free choice, correct?
Say that again.
It is safe to like it can be you can to
Oh,
make like a mineral buffet, you can free choice it.
yes, you can.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and
Perfect.
so, great question. Thank you. When it comes to conditioner, just know, again, remember that they will eat conditioner according to how much stress they're under. So you might put conditioner out, and if your cattle are in good shape and everything's clicking, they may not want to touch it. But there might be a day in the spring or fall like that when a bunch of nitrates pop into the grass or something, and you'll go out there and it'll be gone. So, but that's why and when I was finishing my own beef, I did that for years and years until my daughter and son-in-law started doing it for us. But I put him on conditioner too, and there was a huge difference in the way he finished and everything. But that's why I say just mix it in, because see, conditioner doesn't have any fillers or enticers. That's why I just like to put it in with the salt, and then I just know they get it because I know the benefits it's going to give them. And so you can free choice it alone. It'll be up and down on how they eat it, or if you just want to put a little bit in the salt. That's why I say experiment with it though. Feel free to do your own testing on the farm and see what works for you. But great,
I
great
have a story
question.
about that actually. About 2 years ago, we took conditioner out of our mix and we were just feeding the selenium 90.
Mhm.
And my cows started retaining their placenta to about 4.5, 5.5 hours, which for us was unusual.
Mhm.
Typically, they'll drop it in about 3.5 hours after they calve. Put the Redmond's conditioner back in. The next group of calves that calved, they all dropped in 3.5 hours. So that conditioner was definitely making a big impact.
Oh, well, that's great. I appreciate that story. There's just something about it, and I wish I knew all the answers. I'm the kind of, I wish I knew why. I like always knowing why, but I don't have the funds. I don't have, and sometimes it's not necessary because as soon as you learn one thing, then you have to research something else and you have to eliminate all the variables. It's like I could go broke trying to research what's going on with these products. And so we've done a lot of testing, but we can't test everything.
Can you
Um,
explain to us what chelated versus non-chelated means?
You
It was one of the questions that we had
bet.
coming into this that people were curious because we know for ourselves that we're supposed to look for vitamins that are chelated. So is that
Yep.
something that we're looking for our cows? And is that something that's already done with Redmonds?
Okay, good question. So chelated, just to review to make sure in case somebody doesn't know, chelated just means that they've taken minerals or vitamins or whatever, and I don't know the scientific way they do it or in the lab, but they attach it to an amino acid or something like that to where the body now has no choice but to utilize it. It can't be passed through if it doesn't want it. So when you chelate minerals, that's why they say you do that. Um, we haven't used chelated minerals, in my personal opinion, because of these whole food natural type minerals like this that are in synergy with every other mineral and it's all in nature's balance and proportion. I call that nature's chelation. In fact, I won't tell you which company, but one of them that has a pretty high story and a lot of money. They're one of those companies that they have a traveling PhD with every salesman. And their stuff also costs $95 a bag to pay for those PhDs, but they brag on the four minerals that they put that are chelated that just are the silver bullet. And I said, what's in the bag besides just those chelated minerals? I had to ask a few times, but it came down to, well, it's ground up corn cobs. That's what carries this stuff. So your $95 bag has about, in 50 pounds, it has about 10 pounds of mineral and 40 pounds of ground up corn cobs. I said, if you want to light those minerals up, put it in SR65. And SR65 for us it stands for stress relief, but you can't say that stuff on a label. But that's our mixture of Redmond salt and conditioner together, already blended. We blended at our place. I said, if you want to light those minerals up, instead of corn cobs, put it in Redmond salt and conditioner or SR, the combination. The lights will come on for your product. And that PhD, that doctor just sat there and looked at me and they didn't want to talk anymore after that. It's like, but no, so that's the chelated thing. That's why we feel like these are nature's chelated minerals. I have never probably seen, unless like I say, there's something really weird. I've never seen justification to spend the money on chelated minerals because they are very expensive. Um, So does that answer your question? Organic might be the other part, organic minerals. I
I've
think,
never heard it explained that way before, that the minerals are bonded so they don't pass through the same way. So I know that that surplus, if we give too much, passes through. So that's kind of an insurance. It helps me to not worry so much about it.
yeah.
Of course, I don't want them wasting it, but the idea that it doesn't just pass through if it's surplus hadn't occurred to me before. So that was really helpful.
It's a catch 22 with that chelated, and then having minerals that aren't as highly available, like that limestone I talked about, where everybody makes up their calcium levels. That stuff is about 10 or 15% bioavailable in the rumen of these cows. So it just is not, they just don't get very much out of it. So it's just passing through. So the double-edged sword, like most things are, the chelation, yes, it gets used, but you got to be careful with it. The other thing is if you use these other ones that aren't quite as available, the body, because biology, the complexity, nature's intelligence, they'll grab what they need out of it, but it's a lot more forgiving if you overdo it or something like that. So there's the plus and the minus on both sides of that.
You mentioned that you could help us with forage testing, and the question in the chat asking how we any of us could take advantage of that and
Oh,
what the fee is for that.
sorry, man, I've been ignoring the chats. I'm glad you're on top
No,
of that.
that's fine. We've got it
I missed
covered.
it
We've got it
anymore.
covered. Sarah's got it for us.
Okay. Yeah, make sure if I don't see it that you definitely ask those questions.
Absolutely.
So how to test with helping with forage stuff,
Right.
forage testing. Yeah, and what we'll do, um, you're just going to use your whoever lab is around you, like your extension lab, the university lab, or if you happen to be near or know of like Dairyland Labs or Midwest Labs or whatever, anybody that does this, you can send your feed to them. And actually, if you go on their websites and find one near you or one that you like to use, they'll have a page that tells you explicitly how to collect your samples to
Okay.
send. They'll tell you where to send it. You don't have to get extravagant on the analyses. You'll probably just want to kind of get your feed quality. They have usually a basic package that'll
Right.
give you your protein and your
Okay.
ADF and NDF and whatever, some digestible starch, sugar. And if you want your mineral profile, usually you ask for that. Just make sure it's included. You don't need to get carried away with that. But if they'll test 5 or 6 of or 7 or 8 even of the macros and some of the bigger micros, and so, and if you need help, I'm happy to get on. But usually their website will be very detailed about that, and so it's pretty easy to do. And after you get that back, I'm more than happy if you email me a copy so I can see it, get on the phone with you. I'll be happy to line that up with what the animal requirements are and kind of help you through that if you want to. And
What
about feed sampling, though, I will say this. Um, if you're only feeding one feed, it gets real easy. You just take that one feed, like if it's the pasture and you clip it or whatever. But if you're feeding, let's say you're feeding some rolled barley and you're feeding some alfalfa and whatever the thing is, you gotta, unless you test all those separately, you've got to mix those in the ratio that you're feeding them.
okay.
If you only send in one sample, and so you've seen those big farms that have a big feeder wagon. You dump all the feed in, it mixes it up and spits it out in the manger. That's when you can just grab a handful and send that in. And that's the best way if you can get the right ratios of how much you're feeding. If you know you're feeding, 10% of this and 5% of this, if you get twice as much of this and half as much of that, that works. Does that
What
answer
should they
what you're?
expect to spend on that kind of testing?
Those aren't bad. You're probably only going to spend $40, $50 maybe. And you don't have to do that too often if you really are curious to just see where you're at, if you just don't really know. And the other telltale sign that you guys all know is just looking at your cows, you know.
Right.
It's kind of like in peat grass in the summer. You might even see, have you ever heard of happy lines? When you look at the ribs, the ones that actually go horizontal to the ground or parallel to the ground, I mean, When they have those, your cows look like little butterballs and they're shiny and slick, and you don't need a forage test to tell you that they're doing well. Visually is I guess what I'm saying is you guys know when your cows look good. You know when they're doing well. You can even tell. I used to could tell with mine just when I'd get her into milk her. I could tell by the way the milk smelled when it hit the pail. It's like, okay, something's different, or whatever. Some of you probably have the same thing.
Yeah.
Good questions. Let's see. Oh,
Somebody mentioned the soil test kit in the chat, and said that it was really good, which I had no idea that you guys did soil tests. But my question to you is, would the soil test be a good indication of like how well their forage is? Like, do those go hand? Obviously, they go hand in hand, but does the test tell you that? Like, if I was to get my soil test back and it's really good, then am I assuming then that my cow's forage is as well?
not necessarily. Sorry, I don't mean to bounce you around on these. I might
Okay.
look for as I talk. And the reason I say that is speaking of that Southern Indiana dealer that I was just talking about, we actually went to a guy's farm and took the soil test, all of his feed tests and everything. It happened to be a bison farm, doesn't matter, but the soil test was was pretty poor. But the crazy thing is his grass tested pretty well. And so it doesn't always transfer over. And a lot of it's how you manage the field and that kind of stuff. But I think it's interesting with nature. I mean, since God created all of it, I mean the whole plan, the whole thing is nature is trying to make the best of every situation, is trying to compensate. And so it's crazy what will still grow out of soil that's subpar, in comparison. So anyway, yeah, it's not always just a direct correlation.
Thank you.
I need to find, my computer was being a little bit slow, but I wanted to find I thought I had a picture of that soil test. We have a little soil test you can buy. It's really easy. Let's see. Trying to find it. Okay, here I'm going to share again. I think I found it. So this, don't worry about all my other stuff, but this soil test kit here, if you want to use that, you can. And again, soil test, if you do it locally, probably about the same. You're probably looking at $40 or something. And it's going to be a little more complete. This one will measure 13 minerals, is it? 13 or 14 minerals, and the pH. That's what you get. And this test is made for, I guess I could put this on presentation mode again so you can see it better. This one's kind of made for people who are already probably taking pretty good care of their soil. They probably are adding manure or compost or, organic matter of some kind. It's a different technology, so it's measuring kind of plant available minerals. And this, I don't know if that bar right in the way, but this picture on the right with the blue bars on it, that's what the results will come back looking like. What's easy about this test is you can just order it. It tells you what to do once you lift the lid. You just take it to the post office and then you wait for your email to come back. So it's real easy that way. Otherwise, you can do the extension or whatever and go send that and go that route. And I can help you walk through that too if you want to. So that's that soil test. So it depends on what you're after. I probably ought to talk about that because you guys got some cows, you probably got some pastures and stuff. Would you like me to talk about what we've done on the soil and if this is something you would like to hear about how these products, because it works the same way in the soil.
I think we would all enjoy that.
Let me jump up here. And to begin with, the guiding principles, like we talked about with the animals already, um, you got to follow good practices. That's number one. I mean, and you've all probably seen these. You can look them up anywhere. But the principles of regenerative agriculture, you just the more you can leave roots in the ground, the more diversity you can have, and definitely introducing livestock. If you don't have livestock, well, you do have some livestock, but if you don't have enough, if you can get some manure or compost, minimal disturbance, those are the things you do first. If you do that, then nature kind of knows what to do. You're protecting the soil, you're allowing the microbes to grow and thrive. Those are the first steps. The worst thing you can do is plow up your ground and leave it bare all winter long. That kind of a thing just is not going to help you build a lot of health. Those microbes have to live on something all winter. They're still alive. So what our products do in this case, and it's the same thing, the rumen and the soil are the same, really. They really are. So what our products are doing for the soil is the same as in the cows. You've got electrical conductivity, and Redmond salt just scores off the charts for that. That basically is the spark plug to the engine. That just puts everything in the soil into action. Just a little bit of Redmond salt. All you need is like 50 pounds an acre, 100 pounds an acre. That's all you got to do. And that just gets everything moving. Redmond conditioner in the soil is high in cation, or just say nutrient exchange capacity. So just like in the rumen, it's making the feed digest better, it's more efficient. In the soil, you're just making the bugs be able to do what they do. And you still have all the trace minerals too with these products that you're just not getting anywhere else. So, and then remember what I said earlier, this process we're talking about, we're here to build soil. We're not here to necessarily fertilize plants. If you have an outlier, like your soil test will tell you, by all means address it. Like if your calcium is way out of balance or something, you can go ahead and spend some money on that. Or if you're like just don't have any nitrogen, it's okay to do that. This stuff we're talking about, once again, is to actually over the long haul to just build your soil. So I don't know if I want to, I guess I'll stop on this slide just a second, just to show you that this is in Wisconsin. Good farms, regular old farms. Basically, what this is showing you is that where we compared ourselves against a fertilizer program, you basically have dead soil as far as biology is concerned. And just in one season, this is on an alfalfa field, just with Redmond products, we started waking up the bugs in the soil. That's what you want. That's what builds the soil. And for all of you who know, our minerals don't have nitrogen in. So how do you get 4 pounds of nitrogen showing up in that soil that you didn't put there? Well, in your cow nutrition language, we call that microbial protein, because when you feed microbes, the microbes live and die and reproduce and keep going and going like that. Well, as they do that, guess what shows up? Nitrogen. This is one of those beauties of nature's intelligence. And so when you have guys like Gabe Brown that don't put any nitrogen on anymore, it's because he did enough of those right things for enough years that those plants know how to pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere, because the atmosphere has tons of it. Just that's what we're talking about. We're talking about building a system that is sustainable, not just throwing out some Tylenol every year, as it were. So that's a cool slide. I just like to share that one because we did that one year. That's an expensive test to do, to actually measure the microbes in your soil. But it's like we know that it's supporting the bug populations in the soil or the microbes. So we went ahead and did the test on it just so we could say, okay, now, yep, our suspicions were correct. So that's kind of neat. What was the last question I was
Can
going
I
to
just
tell?
ask about the spreading on the pasture? Is there an ideal time of year that should be done?
That's the other cool thing about natural products. You just can't screw it up. But we've probably measured the best results, and we've measured lots. Like that independent company that was doing that research in Wisconsin, we did that for like 6 years straight. I've tested salt alone, I've tested conditioner alone, I've tested every fertilizer program. I've even tested the biological programs that these guys talk about. Here's the one you can take to the bank. Even the biological programs, the one thing that always showed up whenever you put Redmond, the feed quality is higher every time. And you can't always see that. You have to measure it. So whether that's your garden or the pasture, the stuff that you're eating or your animals are eating always is more nutrient dense. Sorry, I had to say that so I didn't forget. Tell me your question one more time.
Sorry. The question was when you were talking about you actually using the 50 to 100 pounds per acre on the pasture. Sorry, the
Mhm.
baby woke up here. Is there an ideal time of year?
The timing.
Like,
Thank you.
will the microbes are waking up in the spring or something like that?
Yes, and when we have measured stuff, we've probably measured the most benefit. I mean, as you build soil, it'll always come back to you if you manage it properly, like a good investment does or whatever. But yeah, if you do it in the spring, that you're never going to go wrong. But the spring's when we usually just tell people, yeah, just do it as soon as you can. And if you do it, like if you're spreading manure or you are spreading fertilizer because you need to or whatever, you can put this stuff with it. So you're only having to go out there once. You don't have to make a special trip. But
Can
yeah,
we buy these products through the Redmond's website?
you can. Let me go over them just real quick. It's real easy. This this build product, it's called Build, Mineralite Build. That is our SR, so Redmond salt and conditioner already blended. And by the way, in all the testing we did, we always got better results combining them than either one together because of the two properties they bring together because they're different. So this one also has some humates, and we've actually got another volcanic mineral that comes out in Nevada that's higher in sulfur. Sulfur is one of those negative ions that leaches really fast and goes away, but it's critical for building things for plant health. So it's got humates and a little bit of that sulfur volcanic material along with our own Redmond salt and conditioner. This Mineralite Grow is same thing as we did with the animal minerals. It's built with chicken manure in it. So now you've got a source of all the other things plus the organic matter. And the soil thing, man, it's so easy to get too complicated, but it is not. Really what you're doing is the chicken manure, or if you have access to, I don't care what it is, if you've got emulsified fish, or if you've got, doesn't matter what it is, if you've got good organic matter, that is the food for the microbes. So if you're leaving the soil covered, you're protecting it, you know, you need to give those bugs something to eat. And that's what manure and all those things do. You're feeding the bugs. So that's what the chicken manure does. If you've got enough manure on your place, by all means, spread it. Don't buy this one. Just get these other minerals here. The SR that I already told you about, that's just the Redmond salt and clay combined. You can get those too if you feel like you have a pretty good mineral profile and you've got your own compost or whatever you're doing. You can even just take the stuff you're feeding the cows and go spread it. And we only do, if you're doing the mixture here, we just do a couple 100 pounds an acre once a year. If you do build, that's probably a good number. If you do grow, you probably need to up it to 300 or 400 pounds an acre, just because we've got a lot of chicken manure in that one. So to get the same electric effect and the same trace minerals, you need to put a little bit more of this one on. So that's really how simple the soil program is, just quite like the cow program. Does that make sense? Any questions on that?
That's great. And I really appreciate you adding that little bit in addition to the cattle, because what we feed them mostly is off of the ground. So what we can grow is going to affect their nutritional needs and using the other products. So I appreciate you diverting a little bit off onto this soil topic.
Well, it's the base of all of these operations. And this year, I don't have anything to show you yet, but this year we're actually partnering with someone that's actually here in Utah. We're going to take concentrated, it's basically a fish farm. We're taking the concentrated fish poop and and it's got worm castings, but they actually put in some probiotics for the soil, some bacteria and fungi, the essential ones. And so we're going to introduce that too, that you can get online. And that stuff, you put a couple tablespoons in a gallon of water and just water that way. And so it goes a long way. But now not only do you have the bug food, but we're actually introducing some of the bugs just in case you need a boost in the bug population going into your soil. So that'll be the third product to stretch out over here to kind of help with that. And I'll tell you what, I'll be the first to say, if you have access to those things, or if you're growing it, I'm not going to be offended if you don't buy this. We want you to be self-sustainable. We want you to build your soil. We want you to build your animals. And so we're just not going to get into this stuff to just sell stuff to sell stuff. It's like we want things that actually build health and build a long-term sustainable program to where you can minimize all the external inputs. So this is how you do it.
Looks what the
There's another question in the chat that someone
Okay.
was asking, if you're ready for that.
You bet.
So she says it's in the winter, her girls get looking rough. I guess she means their coats. So she's wondering if she's not feeding enough or what might be going on with that.
Good question again. So the same thing applies. Obviously, number one is make sure your animals have enough protein and energy, fat, plenty of water, high quality, because if they don't have enough of all those things, frankly, minerals aren't going to matter. You don't make milk and you don't make meat with minerals. You got to have good feed for that. So if they're looking rough in the winter, and if you want to again, and even if any of you call me separate, you're welcome to do that. But if I know what you're feeding, maybe I can glean some things just off the top. Otherwise, we can, get a feed sample for you. You can take that and we can go over it. But if they're looking rough, yeah, it's usually the quality of the feed. Are you getting enough protein for one? And then do you have enough high quality energy? When with that company I worked with, I did both beef cattle and dairy cattle. In Montana, we had a couple thousand beef cows, and in Colorado, we had about 850 milk cows. But when it really showed up was on the beef cows, which are probably managed a little more like I'm guessing you manage your cows, they're grazing and stuff like that mostly. We did it by design. After the calf is weaned, we knew that over winter we were going to lose probably a full body condition score, just because of the low quality inputs we were doing. So on beef cattle body scoring, we'd go from about a 5.5 down to a 4.5. I would still supplement protein. I would still do the stuff so they were in pretty good shape. But then when the spring came on, the grass, we bump up the nutrition level. But yeah, that's it. Usually that's the first place it shows up. But yeah, the short answer is take a good look at your protein and your energy sources, what you're feeding, and I'll be happy to walk through those if you need me to.
Okay, well, we've already kept you past the hour that you promised us, but you can
I'm
see
I'm
everybody's
good to
hanging in
go.
there.
I don't want to bore you, but if you have more, I'll take it. So whatever you
We've
want.
still got the 19 people that we peaked at 22. So I am really happy with the turnout. I think we all have enjoyed your time and your lessons. We've really appreciated it. Uh, I'm going to go ahead and
It's a pleasure. Any other questions? I didn't strap myself, so I'm wide open if you have more questions. I don't want to leave anybody hanging.
I have a question.
Mhm.
I missed a couple minutes, so I don't know if this got covered at all or if this is up part of your stuff you would do, but is there any kind of tactics you'd use to combat milk fever with your
Hmm.
mineral supplementation, or how do you deal with that?
question.
So you've probably had some then.
My neighbor has and I have, yeah.
Yeah. Um, that one could be several things.
Yeah.
I, well, I guess I shouldn't ask you to get into the details on this call, but of your feeding program and all that. Um, yeah,
Some lady once said, like, just with a high producing milk cow, just assume to give it a subcutaneous bottle of calcium magnesium when it calves.
and
And that
that's
just
not,
didn't seem to ring very well with me. And I'm
yeah,
like, I surely there's a way through preventative like diet stuff.
yeah. During that dry period, um, we don't get a lot of reports of milk fever on these kind of things. And again, it's usually in the typical dairy world. I don't know, and you don't have to tell me. I don't want anybody to air their laundry on a public call, but a lot of times in the traditional dairy world where I came from, they don't give dry cows salt. So back to that argument about that, Dr. Swarzik talked about that with even milk fever.
Uh-huh.
And the reason they don't typically give salt on high producing cows is because when you use refined salt, this is one of those differences. When you use refined salt, it blows up the udders. The edema is just increased so much, in that last trimester. That's why they avoid salt. But then they have to do all these tricky things, like you're saying, a bottle of calcium mag or calcium gluconate or something, or the way they start to feed them. But when you feed Redmond salt to a dry cow, that edema doesn't happen, because nature knows what to do with it. It makes the stuff flow through the cell membranes like it's supposed to do. So I think number one, usually our folks don't normally have milk fever problems if they're doing this kind of a thing. And if the feeding program is sensible, we usually avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Lily,
Um,
have you previously used Redmond products with your cow?
have
Did I?
Yeah,
Oh.
Lily, have you?
Oh,
I
sorry.
have, yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't used the mixed mineral ones because I'm in Canada and I don't know that we can even get them here. But I've used the Redmond salt, and then I give her a bunch of different stuff. Like, yeah, she's got a pretty
Where
good diet, I would have thought. But then, yeah,
where in
last
Canada
spring
are
she
you?
had milk fever.
Where in
Pardon
Canada
me?
are you? Where are you in
British,
Canada?
southern BC.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask where you get your Redmond stuff from? Are you near the Vifield guys, the Vifield dairy guys?
No, I'm pretty remote.
Okay.
Kootenai Meadows is the closest dairy to me. I'm
Okay.
just like a small, like homestead raising a few
Sure.
Jersey
Sure.
cows. Um,
Because these products are the Redmond salt and the conditioner. In Canada, they make us call it anti-caking agent. That's the
yeah,
thing. That's about label cocks, but they are available in Canada.
okay, so maybe at that, yeah, I get it at Ellison's, and maybe they can order the other stuff in.
Ask them to. And again, if they run into any trouble there, just call us and we'll try to help to facilitate getting some if you can't find it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because they do get the anti-caking there. I have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay. That's the conditioner. That's the
Yeah.
same thing. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. See if that helps you. Um, well, again, I don't want to put you on the spot. And
Oh,
I,
I mean, I'm happy to
I
share
know you
whatever.
got good feed there. What are you feeding those dry when she's dry?
Um, I mean, I make all my own hay, and it's a mix of like perennial grasses, timothy, orchard grass, fescue, a little bit of alfalfa, clover, vetch. That's kind of the majority of it. And then
Okay.
I've not ever had it tested, so I'm not sure what it is for that. And then I buy in some more like second, third cut alfalfa,
Okay.
and I feed her some of that. And then she gets like a bunch of different kind of mineral mixes and Redmond salt and kelp and a selenium, and yeah.
So you've got a pretty good thing going. Yeah.
I think so, but
I've got a dairy buddy. I'll talk to him a little bit too and see what else might be triggering that on such a diet. Usually that kind of a thing doesn't, show up. But I will say just from experience too, I don't know how many of you have dairied beyond what you're doing, but um if somebody's gonna get milk fever, it'll be a Jersey.
yeah, mine are all jerseys
Yeah.
and Jersey crosses. And then my neighbor's same thing, and she got milk fever this year
Yeah,
too.
for whatever reason, they're just a little more susceptible to that
Oh, okay.
than the
Okay.
Holsteins are. But
Right. Okay. So there's nothing like while she's dry or around the season.
I wouldn't withhold the salt. I would definitely put the salt in the conditioner to her when she's
Yeah.
dry.
Okay.
And I don't think, I mean, kelp is good stuff. I don't know. I don't think the selenium's probably going to affect that if you're adding some selenium too.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's down to what's going on with the calcium. So,
Yeah.
but where
Is
you're
there a
doing,
way to free choice some extra calcium?
well, you're doing alfalfa though. What percentage of that total with the mixed hay and alfalfa are you using?
pretty high.
Pretty high in alfalfa. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I think you're meeting all the book answers that I know of anyway.
And then I feed her like I have a 2-to-1 and then a 1-to-1 that I offer just in case she has like too much calcium, then she can choose the 1-to-1 for more
Mm.
phosphorus.
Interesting.
I don't know.
You know what?
I don't actually have like the perfect system. I'm just like trying a bunch of different stuff.
You bet.
I'll start like that. That's totally normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be researching. I'm going to talk to my buddy and um, I'm going to talk to him about what you're doing. And since I don't have everybody's contact, is it okay, Hannah, if I just like, hey, I talked to him and send it to you and you can forward it to Lily?
Yeah, that's great.
See what he said, let me see what he says about it. What else? I didn't bore you with a ton of slides, but we have way more to show, but I don't think with this crowd we have to substantiate anymore. Most of it was just supporting evidence of all the research we've done, but
We would like whatever information you could send to everyone if you could. Like on the milk fever, we've had it. We were told to withhold the mineral and then cut out the alfalfa
Yeah.
until after she calves. But we've only had the issue with one cow. And they suggest trying to have the cow mobilize their own calcium pre-birth, and then it's less of a big load on them later. But I don't know. I mean, that's just what we were told, but that doesn't mean it's right.
that is a good point. Thanks for bringing that up because I know that is the standard answer, and maybe in Lily's case, maybe it is a little too much alfalfa. Maybe we should back that off a hair. Because that's where you're probably going to have your highest calcium there. But forages in general are higher calcium. I mean, the conventional dairy world, and I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but those guys are pretty much corn silage and straw. They'll cut that out at the end, but they still have troubles with it because they're not salting and they're not doing all this stuff. But I guess if you're in the mood to experiment, that's something you probably could do just for the last 30 days is cut back a little bit of that alfalfa if you're giving them quite a bit. But yeah, I'll be happy to visit with him and see what he says. Because this guy's hardcore dairy his whole life. In fact, he used to work for us. So,
Nice. And it tends to be those girls that are very dairy, so they're finer boned, and they just don't have the ability to build up the reserves that those chunkier, heftier girls can do, which I think
yeah.
for a lot of us, when I've talked to some of you that are familiar here, we have bred specifically towards mini because we don't have as many issues with that. I know also in my own reading and research that and training that those cows that tend to have milk fever are also the ones that tend to get some grain. So breeding away from that need for grain produces animals that are not as likely to get milk fever. So Lily, if you're having trouble with your cow or Larice, excuse me, finding a mini sire who's got grass genetics behind him, it's not going to help the cow you've got now, but it may move the next generation away from some of those issues that you're running into.
Okay, thanks for that. Do you have a recommendation of where to get mini Jersey semen from?
Absolutely.
Maybe you could.
I'll get with you later, but we've
Okay.
got some members in Canada that have straws already in Canada from
Okay.
Grass-Fed Genetics. So
Awesome.
make a note and I'll get with you about that.
Thank you.